in this video, we are going to discuss about Albert Bandura's social learning theory. So, if we just go through December 2023 NET exam, we have got a very interesting question from this particular theory. So, we'll be exploring that question, and through that, we'll be learning some of the important points that you need to remember from social learning theory by Albert Bandura in a NET point of view. And here you have the question. So, this was asked in December 2023, as I have already mentioned. Which of the following are the elements of observational learning? We have the options: production, attention, identification, retention, and motivation. So in this question, it is not mentioned as Albert Bandura's social learning theory, but it states about, or it asks us to find out the elements of observational learning. But this question is basically something you can associate with Albert Bandura's social learning theory, because in Albert Bandura's theory, we are learning through observation, or we observe and imitate the behaviors of others. So this is what the social learning theory is all about. So initially, we are going to look at what the social learning theory as a whole, and then we'll be particularly going to discuss the various elements or components or the requirements of observational learning. So as I have already mentioned, this theory was introduced by Albert Bandura. So Albert Bandura's social learning theory suggests that we learn social behavior by observing and imitating the behavior of others. So this particular theory focuses on how we learn behaviors from other people, or how we observe and imitate the behavior of others so that it molds our own social behavior. So this is what Albert Bandura's this theory focuses on. And when we focus on this imitation aspect, there is one important thing that we need to focus there as well. So we observe, assimilate and imitate others' behavior when witnessing positive or rewarding experiences. So what actually motivates us to imitate a particular behavior of someone else is basically the rewarding experiences that they have. So if you are seeing a particular person is rewarded as a result of exhibiting a particular behavior, that will motivate you to assimilate or observe and imitate that behavior in your social interactions as such, right? So this is a very important aspect of this particular learning procedure. So we observe, assimilate and imitate others' behavior when witnessing positive or rewarding experiences. And Bandura proposed that modeling or learning is composed of 4 mediational processes or conditions that must be met. So in this particular theory, he is actually focusing or exploring 4 important condition processes, or even you can call it as 4 different elements that are required in this process of observational learning. So we can call it as learning or even modeling. So this observational learning consists of these 4 elements, or these are the 4 different conditions under which we will be learning the behaviors from other people. Okay, so which are those 4 different conditions or 4 different elements? The first one is attention. So the first step is we need to pay attention to the various behaviors of others, then only we can imitate that, right? So attention is the first phase. We must pay attention to the model. Our attention increases when behavior is more striking, different or prestigious, and when the model is more similar to ourselves. So attention is the initial stage or condition of observational learning, wherein we are observing. We must have to pay attention to the various behaviors of a particular model. Model means it might be a person, it might be some incidents, or it might be something that you're watching in a TV, or this might be something that you heard of. All these can be considered as different types of models. So we need to initially pay attention to that model, and this attention increases when behavior is more striking, different or prestigious. So when we observe a particular person, it's when that particular behavior really strikes you, or if you're finding someone does something very differently, or if you're finding something very interesting in someone's behavior, then in that particular time is when you're going to observe that particular person. You're giving, or you're paying attention to that particular person. And also that idea of rewarding experience, or if someone is exhibiting a very prestigious behavior, you will really note that, right? So these are some of the conditions that actually increases this process of attention. So, and also another important thing that we need to focus here is this attention increases when the model is more similar to ourselves. So it's like when we see someone is doing something and we can really connect to that. So that person is doing something that we can really connect with, or if you're finding someone who is very similar to us and that person is doing something different, that will really influence us, right? So these are some of the requirements, or these are some of the conditions in which that attention increases. Okay, so this is the first process or element that you can identify in observational learning. So we must pay attention to the model. Our attention increases when behavior is more striking, different or prestigious, and when the model is more similar to ourselves. So the next important component or the next important condition or element in observational learning is retention. So in the first phase, we have just paid attention to that particular behavior, and then we need to remember that, we need to retain that. That is the second phase, that is retention. We must be able to remember the observed behavior. This can be increased through rehearsal. So if you have seen something very interesting, you need to rehearse that in your own interaction, then only you can actually take that behavior, or you can actually exhibit that behavior as your own, right? So that is what retention is all about. Even though if you're paying attention to a particular behavior, that is not the final thing. You need to, if you are finding something interesting, you need to remember that observed behavior. Then only you will take that behavior, or you will do or imitate that in your own interaction. So basically the second component or element is retention, and we must be able to remember the observed behavior, and this can be increased through rehearsal. So if you are finding something interesting and if you are trying to practice it, then through that rehearsal you can actually remember that behavior later on as well. So this is the second element, retention. The third element is reproduction. So what do you mean by reproduction? We must be capable of replicating the behavior just observed. So in the initial step, we have just paid attention, and in the next phase, what we have done is retained that observed behavior. We have remembered that behavior, and in the third phase, we are reproducing, we are replicating it. Whenever we are getting an opportunity, we are actually trying to exhibit that particular behavior. You are replicating that behavior, that is reproduction. So this is another important condition which is very essential in observational learning. So attention, then comes a retention, and then comes reproduction. And the final thing that you can identify, the final element that you can identify here is motivation. So why this particular phase is really important in this context? If the human or the animal does not have a reason for imitating the behavior, then no amount of attention, retention or reproduction will overcome the lack of motivation. We must be motivated to demonstrate what we have learned. This can be influenced by both reinforcement and punishment. So motivation is a very important aspect of observational learning. We might have paid attention to various behaviors. We might remember that. At times we might or we could replicate that as well. But all these things actually, all these are influenced by motivation. So if you are not motivated to do something or in order to replicate something, you won't do that, right? So that motivational aspect is very important. So we must be motivated to demonstrate what we have learned. If you have learned something, you need to get some kind of a motivation. Then only you will be demonstrating or exhibiting that particular learned behavior. Okay, so all the other steps, be it the attention, retention or reproduction, all this has to happen, all this happens because we are motivated. That is the idea. So if you lack motivation, then attention or even retention or even reproduction couldn't be happening. Okay, so that is why this motivation is very important, and this motivation can be or it can be influenced. So this can be influenced by both reinforcement as well as punishment. And what I mean by this two aspects of reinforcement and punishment, and how you can apply this particular ideas to this context of social learning. So basically, if you're finding something really rewarding, or if you're finding someone is getting really good appreciations, or if you're seeing someone is really getting a lot of appreciation or rewards for something that he or she is doing, then of course that will give you a motivation to replicate that behavior, or in order to attend or to pay attention to that behavior. So this reinforcement is very important. And also if you're doing something, you are getting some kind of rewards that will actually motivate you to exhibit that behavior again and again. And this has a negative side as well. If you're seeing that someone is behaving in a certain way and that person is getting some punishments, or if that person is not getting any kind of approval, or he or she is getting negative outcomes out of that behavior, that will actually motivate you to not follow that particular behavior as well. And also if you're doing or if you're imitating a behavior and if you're getting punishment for that, that means that particular behavior is not that much appreciable, or that is not something other people can actually appreciate or they can accept. So if you're getting punishment, or if you're witnessing the people who are doing that same behavior is punished for what he or she is doing, then of course that will motivate you to stop or to stop imitating that behavior. Okay, so this is what this reinforcement or reward and punishment has to do with this motivational aspect. So these are the four different elements or conditions that we can see under this social learning theory or this observational learning as a whole. So coming back to the question that we are discussing, it's again we can just go through the question. Which of the following are the elements of observational learning? And we have the options: production, attention, identification, retention and motivation. So of course from what we have learned, attention of course we can take, then retention and motivation, B, D, E we can take. But the thing is, we have learned another important element, that is reproduction. We don't have an option like reproduction in this particular options, but we have an option that is provided. In the net exam, they have provided you with the option production. And if you just have any confusions on that particular option, what we can do is, whether we need to take it or not, that might be a confusing thing when we are attending the exam. We have learned it as reproduction, but in the question, it is mentioned as production. So it might be a confusing factor for many of you. So if you're getting a confused state like this, what you can do is just go through the options that you're very much sure of. So attention, retention, motivation, there is no doubt that we can take those options. Of course, these are short options that you can take for this particular question. So in that manner, we can go with B, D and E and just compare or just focus on the options based on the observations that we have about the question. So we already said that B, D, E will be definitely an answer for this question. And if you just go through the options that are given here, B, D and D is only coming as a combination in option C. In option A, we don't have E option there. In option B, there is no B and D. And in option D, it's only C. So if you just take the options, the combinations, B, D and D comes together only in option C, and in that option they have taken option A as well. So A, they have taken the production as an option that they have given for the element that is reproduction. But in general case, if you just go through the various references of observational learning or social learning theory, it is always mentioned as reproduction. So please do remember it is reproduction itself. But in this question, they have given this term production. Anyway, if you know the concept and if you can just associate it with the question that is there on the screen, you can just go with that option as well. So we can go with A, B, D and D. So A, B, D and D only is option C. So the right answer for this question is option C itself. So this is how we learn through questions as well. So just go through the previous year questions and you can find certain areas, certain theories, certain concepts that they are exploring, and through these questions we can learn a lot of theories and concepts, and that is what makes you more updated in your upcoming exams. The thing is, in every exam they might be exploring something new. In every question paper, in every shift, there might be something new for you to learn. But if you just go through all the shifts, if you are getting a set of question papers, let's say if you're focusing on December 2023 net exam, just go through all the question papers, all the paper 1 question papers, and in that particular analysis, even though there are a lot of areas that might be new to you, there are certain areas that we can identify as new trends addresses. That means there are certain areas that might be repeatedly asked in various shifts. So that is actually giving you an insight about a new trend, or it's like an area from which we got several questions in that particular exam itself. So that means there are high possibilities of getting questions from that particular area in the next exams as well. There might be certain areas that might be asked in 1 or 2 shifts, that's it. But say that there are certain areas that will evidently give you an idea, okay, this is a new area that you need to study. So this kind of an analysis is very important if you are aiming for JRF and all that, because you need to be very much updated in each of your exams. It's not just the basic things that you have learned every time. The basic things, basic concepts are the foundations, but you need to build on that. So this is what the thing which we all find really hectic, to identify the new areas and to identify the new concepts to be covered, and this is where Aptitude Academy can actually help you. So we does that part and you just need to study whatever things that are updated as such. So this is how we explore the new trends in the net exam. So we just go through the previous year question papers and we find out the mostly updated areas, and we provide you classes for that as well. So if you just go through our online platform, and even if you can just join to our classes, you can identify how these updations are happening in the entire course as such. So if you are interested to know more about our courses, you can just contact the number that is given below. So that's it for this session. Thank you and happy learning.